still joins will join us in a few minutes. So we will mute everyone now, and only the speaker will have the sound. And the time will come, we'll unmute himself. So so hi and shalom everyone. Thank you for joining us for another online briefing. Today, actually, we have with us supporters and lay leaders and staff from almost all over the world. I counted. We have Brazil, Belgium, Bulgaria, Canada, Chile, France, Israel, Italy, Switzerland, Spain, South Africa, UK, Ukraine, and the USA. So I think it's nice. It's a nice range of people. Our program today for the next hour includes a greeting from our president, Dr. Conrad Giles, and our chair of the Board of Trustees, Judy Menikoff. A short update from Dan Green, our acting CEO. And the main focus will be on our 4 students that are representing 4 countries. We have Faina from Israel, Dan from Brazil, Shmuel from Spain, and Ronit from Bulgaria. And they will share with us their experience during the COVID-19 period, and you will have an opportunity to ask them questions. Whoever has any question, please text me privately. You can use the chat button, at the bottom of the screen, and just text me. And I'll choose some of the questions, or you can raise your hand at the end of the students speaking, and we'll pick some questions. And hopefully we'll finish on time in around an hour. So Conrad Giles, our president, will open. If you can unmute yourself, Connie.
Am I on okay now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
That's wonderful. I must tell you that after hearing your introduction, I must point out that it's important that I not prepare my comments in advance and write them, because my introduction was going to include what we were going to be doing today, the countries we were going to come from, and you did it beautifully. I guess it's another example of having to adapt my greeting after hearing your wonderful introduction. And adaptability is something that certainly those of us who have been involved with World Ort through our 140 years of history recognize. We adapted to Russia when they threw us out from St. Petersburg, moved to Berlin, and finally on to London. And we're being challenged today probably as much as any time in our history. We're being challenged by a virus that none of us certainly in this country anticipated, and those of us who were wise enough to know about it in advance didn't share it widely enough for us to do something about it. It doesn't change for much of the world, and we're all being affected materially by it. And what doesn't change, however, is our obligation to the education of the students, 4 of whom you're going to be hearing from today. Now, their challenges, of course, are increased because of the lack of the usual functioning of an educational network. Fortunately, we have been well-versed in education through technology. And that, of course, is one of the hallmarks of Ort and its pedagogy. We heard at the time of our last visit from 4 seasoned, wonderful professionals, a microcosm of the individuals who continue to provide the education to our youngsters on a daily basis throughout our system. Now you're going to hear from 4 of the students. We can look with pride. While we have great pride in our professionals, I think that in the end, those of us who are deeply involved, while appreciating our professionals, recognize the joy that we should all experience from recognizing the ability for us as donors, as individuals involved in our society writ large, to contribute to the education of the youngsters. So welcome. We'll meet these challenges. I know that we have done it in the past. I'm convinced we will do it in the future. I thank you for participation and look forward to seeing you at additional meetings such as this in the future. And even most importantly, when we can meet face to face. Please stay safe. Thank you. Dan Green, our interim Director General, will now speak next. Dan?
Thanks, Connie. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We're delighted again that so many of you have chosen to spend an hour of your time with us and getting what I'm sure will be a really interesting and important briefing from, as Connie said, our 4 students. It's really time that we all heard how our students are coping in lockdown, how they're coping not seeing their friends, and how they're coping not being at school. So I'm really excited to hear from them, as I'm sure you are. Now, one of the pleasures of doing this role is I have a lot of opportunities to give updates and briefings to different groups around the world from different organizations and some internal organizations as well. So for those of you particularly who might have been on an Alt America call just a few days ago where I gave an update, there's not a huge amount that has changed since last Wednesday or Thursday. So forgive me for any repetition for some of you, but it's important that everyone else who wasn't on that call can get a sense of it. But I will keep it brief because I know we want to hear from our students. I want to start by saying you'll remember, those of you on the call last time, the principal of one of our schools in France, Moises Tibi, unfortunately was quite seriously ill with coronavirus and had been on a ventilator for a number of weeks in a Paris hospital. And he's still in that situation. We've been told his health is improving, although he's not yet well enough to leave the ICU department in the hospital. But our thoughts and prayers are obviously with him and everyone who's affected by this. In terms of our situations with our schools, obviously you're aware that they're all still closed at this time. There is one exception I just wanted to let you know about, which is Kfar Silva in Israel, which obviously is a youth village, and there's a dormitory section. Over 200 students live as well as study. And whilst many of them have been able to get back to their homes in Israel, a number of those students actually study in Kfar Silva, although they originally come from countries of the former Soviet Union are on a program called Na'aleh. And many of them, as well as some from Israel, for a number of reasons elected to stay at Kfar Silva. So obviously we have a staff from the youth village, from the dormitory group, which stays with them and provides them continued education curricula, and they're working on the farm as well, obviously in an appropriate fashion in terms of social distancing. But sort of life does still go on in that school as well, because it very much is part of life as well as their education. Most of our summer schools have either been cancelled or put on hold, as well as the teacher seminars that we run. The Digital Skills Academy, which runs in Bulgaria every July, was postponed unfortunately until next year. The STEM summer school, the science school in Israel, has been postponed till next January or February, where we hope it will take place in Browdy College, as it was supposed to this year. And in terms of the teacher training programs, the Hatta seminar has been postponed till after the coronavirus situation, and hopefully that will take place in Israel as well at the end of the year. And our lead seminar is due to take place in London in November. And that will actually focus those educators who will take part in it on how they will respond to the crisis or respond to crisis situations. So that'll be very topical. Our education department hopes to run a virtual educators forum in the next month or so. So obviously those, just as with our schools, our own teacher training programs will continue online. We've also set up a number of our own initiatives at World Or. One of them is called Virtual Volunteers, which I'm sure you've heard about already through our newsletters and these updates. And I'm delighted to say that over 150 of our supporters from all around the world have signed up to become volunteers for our students, to offer them either language lessons or other masterclasses in different areas of their own expertise to give our students something a little bit different. So I'm just really delighted that so many of you, thank you, you'll know who you are on this call, have really stepped up to the plate and been part of that to give something back to our students. From a fundraising point of view, you should be aware that we have launched a campaign in response to the coronavirus, our Immediate Needs campaign. And this is addressing basically the fallout from the coronavirus, how it's impacted on our students and their families. The most practical way that they've told us that they need our help is by providing laptops, iPads, wireless modems, in order for those students who unfortunately don't have that kit at home to continue with their lessons. Or perhaps it's a family of 4 or 5 and there's only one computer at home, so they're sharing it. So to ease the burden there, and we're so thankful that many of you are already dipping deep into your pockets to help us there. I'm really, really delighted to say that in the 2 or 3 short weeks since we launched the fundraising campaign, we've already raised nearly $300,000, and that's just remarkable in such a short period of time. And that's going to have, I know, a huge impact on those students. And I think it will go further than that as well, because this is important to know. We're also starting to hear about the concern that many of our schools have about the economic impact the coronavirus will have on our families further down the line, perhaps when the world gets back together and people's jobs are either have been lost or under threat, and they may find it difficult to pay their school fees. So that's another way that we hope to be able to step in and help our schools bridge that financial gap as well in some places. And I have to say, on the fundraising side, you should remember our phenomenal Honorary President Jean de Gunsberg, who has offered us a fantastic $1 million matching grant over 2 years for any unrestricted funding from new donors or over and above. And much of the money we've already raised is eligible for that grant. So all of those dollars that are coming in are doubling at the moment. So that's brilliant. There's lots of good news that has come from the coronavirus. Unfortunately, we're in this situation, but it's so inspiring to see the work that we're doing around our network. And one of the stories, just one I really wanted to highlight for you, which was featured in our newsletter on Friday. Please sign up to that from our website if you don't subscribe, because there's some fantastic stories that are being shared. That of a lady called Inna Korotayeva. Vladimir, forgive me if I got that wrong. He's my Russian tutor. 85-year-old Inna is from Yekaterinburg, and she is actually one of Ort's students, obviously a more mature student. She takes part in our Keshenet program, and as a senior citizen, her and other members of the Jewish community in that town of Yekaterinburg came to learn digital skills, came to learn how to use a computer, how to go online, how to shop online. And she tells the story of how basically being part of that program has really saved her during this period of isolation. It's enabled her to have the confidence to shop online. It's made her realize that she can tap into digital theater and opera. It's enabled her to stay in touch with her family around the world, and it's been a huge lifeline. So it's just wonderful that whilst we look forward to hearing our younger students in a couple of minutes, to also hear about some of our more mature students who have benefited from this way. It's just fantastic. And now just a couple of small points to finish off with. Last week saw Yom HaShoah, and I was really pleased that our team pulled out all the stops to relaunch World Ort's Music and Holocaust website. This is a phenomenal resource. I urge all of you to have a look at it. You can find the link on World Ort's own website, detailing the history of music from 1933 to 1945, and finding many recordings of the music that was even composed in concentration camps such as Theresienstadt and Auschwitz. And it's a phenomenal resource, so please do check that out. Last week, the 22nd of April, saw the 140th birthday of Ort. It was actually on that day that we celebrated 14 decades as an organization. And that's another amazing achievement that we should all really be proud of. And I think with all of this activity, again, this is something I shared last week with some of you from America. My wife and I walked past a church last week and we were really touched by the sign outside the church. It said, "The building is closed, but the church is open." And I thought that's a really simple statement, was so powerful, whether it's a church, a synagogue, a mosque, or World Orts and all of our activities. This organization is very much alive and open for business. And I'm so excited that we are able to continue the really important work that we're doing, even during this difficult period. So thanks for everyone's contributions to that end. I'd now like to hand back to Avital to introduce the first of our students. Thanks very much.
Yeah, so thank you, Dan. So yeah, now we are to the main part of this meeting, actually meeting our students. And, I allow them to introduce themselves. I think they will do it much better than me. And we'll start with Shmuel from Spain.
Okay, so first of all, thank you, Avital. And I'm Samuel Gutierrez from Spain. I was born in Madrid, and that's where I actually currently live with my family and my sister. And I have been attended even Gabriel's school classes. I've been taking classes which are part of the IB diploma program. And this school has also been the main link between the ORT organization and myself. So as you may already know, the situation in Spain is pretty tough. There have been already over 23,000 deaths. So we have been affected to a great extent, not only that way, but also economically. The small trade and the tourism industry are fearing the consequences of this pandemic worldwide. And we have been under lockdown for over 40 days now, but apparently things are getting better. And now the kids are allowed to go outside for an hour each day. And also we have been able to reduce the amount of daily deaths from 900 to 300 a day, which is not enough if you ask me, but apparently some politicians think it is. Also, I want to talk about how this pandemic and how COVID has affected my learning experience. And I have to say, and I'm really proud of being able to say this, and it's that my school has been really, they have handled this situation perfectly, I would say. And actually, before the state of emergency was declared, and way before other schools did this, our counselor and our head teacher and her headmaster met us, and we talked about how to proceed in case we had to stay at home and how to function with these video calls and technological opportunities that we luckily have nowadays. And so that really helped. And that has helped us to keep improving our skills and keep learning. And we're still working as hard as ever from home. In fact, we always know, but we are actually taking even exams and that assess the efficiency of this abnormal method of learning. So that is really helping too. And I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the huge effort that the teachers and also the staff of the school is doing, because I think it's rather a bigger effort for them than for us, because we're learning similarly to how we used to learn. But teachers, for example, are making a huge effort, and I understand that it is really hard to teach somebody without a blackboard to write on or something like that. Moving on, I would also like to talk about how this has affected my family. And I'm glad to say that nobody has passed on, so that's good. But however, most of us, almost everybody, has suffered some symptoms, but we still don't have the tests here in Spain to prove the presence of antibodies. And we don't know yet if that was coronavirus or not. But for example, my uncle has been locked down in his own room for over 6 weeks now. So we're really worried about that. And also my grandma, worried about them. They're okay, but still. And I would say, however, that the biggest challenge that I have had to face during this time period has been keeping a clear mind and not stressing out, because we as students right now have to juggle with the stress produced by the lockdown, the pandemia, school all together. And this has been a problem in a way, but the school has helped, and we have had meetings with our counselor every single day at the end of the day, and we talk to him about our problems and our interests also. And we have had to find different venting methods since, for example, me as an active person that I consider myself couldn't go outside and go for runs or for long walks as I used to, and I like to. But that brings me to my next point, and is that I think the thing I appreciate the most now is the freedom that we used to have. This freedom that luckily nowadays we are able to take for granted because some other people in the past have fought for it. They have fought for our freedom. And nowadays we can take it for granted, but right now we are locked down against our will. So it's hard not to have this freedom we're used to. And also, obviously, having a home where you can be safe and sound, and you know that you're not gonna be contagious. And also, I would like to talk about how ORT has affected my life. Well, it has been mainly through the summer schools and the summer camps. I have been to the ecology summer camp in Panama last year, and also the STEM summer school in Israel. And through these experiences, I have learned and developed many skills, but not only skills. And I think the most important thing is the values I have learned and developed during this time. And I would like to tell an anecdote, and it's that, for example, I have learned to be open-minded, and I have learned that as a human, I have the duty to help others, right? And last week, for example, I saw a video from a friend of mine who I also met in one of these summer schools, the one in Panama, actually. And his name is Germán. He's from Argentina. And he's studying right now in Glasgow. So he has this economic problem because he had no money, and his parents from Argentina could not send him money because it's not allowed right now for some reason. So I talked to him and I tried to solve his problem. I also gathered around some other friends from our summer school in Panama, and we tried to help him all together. But in the end, it turned out to be okay, and he's fine now. So perfect. I just thought that that was something really interesting and that you should know. So really, thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm sure I will be able to answer them during the answering question or question and answer section at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. It was very inspiring. I'd like to introduce Ronit from Bulgaria.
Hello, my name is Ronit Almagor. I'm 15 years old. I was born in Holon, Israel, but my family moved to Sofia, Bulgaria. Since then, we live here. And I study...
Ronit, can you turn the phone so we'll see? Thank you. Yeah.
Is it better?
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and since we moved here, I study in Dimcha Belanov Art School in Sofia. Currently, the situation in Bulgaria is serious, but yet better than some other countries because of the fast-taken actions by the government. We have been on a lockdown for around or even more than a month now. In the beginning, it was quite unusual, but we are getting used to it. And when we first started studying online, it was a bit hard, but everybody, I guess, is getting used to it now, including me. And I'm happy that we are able to continue study properly and finish this year. At the moment, my whole family is at home, and since there is almost no need to go out, we have much more free time, which have helped me clear up my schedule for finishing the big reading list that I have. My mother and my sister work from home now, so it has bring us closer than before. One of the biggest challenges during the lockdown was understanding school materials. While I have no teacher in front of me physically, I'm one of this type of people that need a teacher in front of them to understand the material. But I luckily overcame this challenge with my mother's and my friend's help. My mother helps me with whatever material she knows, and we study with my friends on a video chat. What I'm mostly thankful for is the hard work of the doctors fighting the disease at first line right now. I'm thankful to the government for taking good and such fast the actions they took, and to all the teachers that continue working as if nothing is happening right now, and they're just doing their job so good. And most of all, I'm thankful to God who guards us all in this difficult time. Art has impacted on my life in a very good way. Our school is one of the most improved in the whole country, which gives us more motivation to study or work about the teacher there. Art has given us a lot of things such as technology, a media studio, a library. It has sponsored our innovative classrooms, and our chemistry lab. It has helped us, the students, by motivating us study things in different fields than the usual. An example is the extracurricular activity I took part in last year, which was entrepreneurship. We were working on a special doorbell called Tinkerbell, and this program has given me a lot of things, such as a confidence to talk in front of a jury.
Thank you, Ronit. Thank you from Bulgaria. And I'd like to invite Dan from Brazil.
Hello. First of all, my name is Cukierman. I'm 17 years old.
Can you speak a little bit louder, Dan?
Oh, can you hear me now? Is it better? Okay.
Yes.
My name is Cukierman. I'm 17 years old. I'm from Brazil. I was born in Rio de Janeiro, where I currently live, and I school at Escola Arte Brasil. The current situation in the whole country here is we've been on lockdown, partial lockdown, since March 16th. And since then, it's been like you can only go out of your house for fundamental stuff. So if you have to go to the supermarket to buy food and supplements, and people people are still working, mostly doctors and salespeople, they have to go to their stores because or else they can't put food on their table. And it's been like a little bit of a debate whether we would pursue a horizontal lockdown or a vertical lockdown. So it only depends if we're going to isolate the risk group, if we're going to make like the elderly or the people who are most susceptible to be affected by the disease to be on lockdown, and let the rest of the population be free and continue their daily lives, or if we're going to make everybody stay on lockdown. So far, we're still in that debate, and that's been going on for about a month and 2 weeks, something like that. And that brings me to the life during the coronavirus outbreak. We had to do a lot of adaptations. So mostly my daily life would be I would go to school and I'll just get home by like 7 o'clock. And now I'm at home 24/7 with not much to do. So that gives me actually extra time to start studying for exams because I'm on my senior year. So that brings out the responsibility of several different exams I have to prepare for, which so far have not been postponed. And it also gives me more time to focus on my school grades. And the little bit of free time that I have left, I tend to just read a book and try to finish several book series that I'm now engaged on. So I've been following how the school is changing since March 16th, quite literally decided. My dad, he's the director at Norte Brasil, and I happened to be in the same room when he was talking about like how we would have to adapt to the situation. So it was like an impressive thing to just be a part of, like just hearing it. The whole school changed in 2 weeks. We had 2 weeks where we had like just to prepare ourselves for the online classes, and then we just went to straight out every day. We kept the same schedule of online classes, and in my school, once you get to high school, you have you can pursue different technical options of study. So we have 5 different options, which would be biotechnology, electronics, programming, social communications, and entrepreneurship, which we all continued studying. And I myself, I started doing electronics 2 years ago, and it's a little bit hard to learn electronics because you don't have like the practical part. You can learn theory to a point, but theory against practicality, it's a different universe. So we managed to find some simulators online where we could like more or less have an idea of what we're learning and applicate it into some little projects that we can do online to a full extent, and that's been like really impressive. And like Shmuel has said earlier, he was now appreciating how the freedom we had before, and it was actually quite funny that during Pesach we were celebrating the freedom from slavery and that we got out of Egypt, and like someone brought it up at the table, probably my younger brother, something like that. He was saying that now we're actually celebrating freedom and we're feeling it more than usually. Like we eat matzah, maror, and all the different things in the Seder so that we can feel what the Jews felt at that age, but we're also feeling a little bit of the not being able to walk freely like we used to. So I just thought that was a fun thing to like just comment on. And it also brings me to what I appreciate actually now with quarantine. I got to appreciate a little bit more of the small things. So like I get more time to spend with my family, which I usually didn't. I would get home around 7 o'clock every day. I would see my mom and my dad just for dinner, and then I would go to bed because I had school the next day. And now we get a time to like interact a little bit more because they still have to work, I still have to study, but we get to talk about different stuff, and it just gives me a little bit more time. And it also gives me more time just like focus on what I have to do. It gives me more time to focus on studying and more time to just like read, which I am an avid reader, so I'm a bit of a bookworm. And the biggest thing that art has helped me with is to pursue a certain career in the future. Because as I mentioned before, my school has different technical studies. Technical studies, which I'm doing electronics, and it was like a perfect match with it. So I've been studying that for a bit now, and last year I had to do 120 hours of an internship, and I did it at a college here in Rio, PUC, and at Optic Fibers, and I ended up doing 200 hours instead of the 120 hours because I was so engaged with the project that I had to do. It just taught me a little bit of the working life with what I want to do, which is engineering. So I had to I told myself, I'm not going to go until I finish this project completely 100%. And I was like really close on. And it just showed me that nothing is like certain. The things that you learn, it may not apply and the same part when you're actually working on it, because there is a number of different outcomes that can, and different things that can interfere with your project. And I just learned how to push forward and just be persistent. And that's mainly the biggest thing that art has done for me. It's just like taught me, prepared me a little bit of how it's going to be in the future when I start working with projects and things like that. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. And the last one will be Faina from Israel.
Hello, my name is Faina. I'm from Israel. I'm 17 years old. I was born in Minsk in Belarus, and when I was 11 years old, me and my family, we made Aliyah, immigrated here to Israel. And since then, I live in Kiryat Yam and study in Rabin High School, the Kadima Mada Art School. About the situation in our country, the situation in Israel isn't that bad. we have about 15,000 cases of coronavirus, and only 1.5% from those cases are death cases. So it's not that bad as in other places in the world, but still there is always place for improvement, and we hope that everything will get as good as possible. There are some relaxations in the laws that are taken for the coronavirus. Actually, till today, we didn't even think about going back to studies. So now it's been announced that next week, kindergartens and the first grades, the first, second, the third grade will come back to school next week. And maybe also high schools will come back in a close future. So we are really waiting for that. About the learning we could have now, the online learning, it was the best we could receive in such a situation. I think my school did everything they could to support us and to give us all the materials and anything needed to really prepare for the tests we're going to have at the end of the year. If you don't know, in Israel, 11th and 12th graders have the Bagrut test, the matriculation test, which are quite a serious issue here. And also the Ministry of Education did everything possible to make it easier for us. They took away 25% of all the materials that are in the test, so we have less to study. And also they gave us an opportunity to choose what subjects we want to do and what subject we will do an internal test, sort of. So actually we received anything needed and all the support, also one-on-one sessions from our teachers. So it is as good as it could. How the coronavirus affected my family, us personally, we don't go out at all. We try to stay at home as much as possible. Also in Israel, there is a law that you can't go more further than 100 meters from your home. So it's saving all of us as healthy as possible. And for me personally, the biggest challenge was to stay at home, because I'm always used to be somewhere, but not home, maybe at school, maybe it's our different meetings that we have, the student councils, any meetings, even meetings with the Ministry of Education, like anything to do with volunteering, just not sitting at home and doing nothing. So for me, it was the biggest challenge to do nothing except for studying and relaxing. And also this is something I really appreciate in this time, that we have the opportunity to be with our families and to be with people we love, and to have some time for ourselves that we don't usually have or don't usually think we need. So it's quite inspiring. Also, we have something in my city and also in many other cities in Israel that teenagers were inspired to do, and we decided to do. It is a volunteering group which we have that I'm a coordinator of in my city. What we do is basically a group of teenagers that don't have any difficulties to go out for a small period of time. We go to supermarkets or to any shops that are allowed to work and to and buy some products and some supplies for the older people in our city that can't go out because it is very dangerous for them. So we go out and buy them the things they need and bring it to their homes to help as much as we can. How art impacted my life, I think it's a very simple thing. It taught me and gave me the opportunity to represent both my school when I was in the entrepreneurship program, and both my country when I was in the Schola seminar in Buenos Aires in Argentina. If you don't know, Schola is an organization that was founded by Pope Francis, and it is about education and improving children's life through education and through different values that they give. So I participated in this seminar last year, and it was a really inspiring experience. I never thought I would meet such people that I could meet there, and to participate in activities that we did there, and especially the values and the ideas we received from there were very inspiring and taught me to bring as much of good thing I can to the people around me as I can. So that's all.
Thank you, Faina. I would like to quote Linda Kirschenbaum's note here that I think summarizes this very well. For inspiring students, the future is in good hands. I agree. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, so thank you for the four of you. And I didn't see any questions rather than if schools are going to open or not. So if anyone wanna ask something, let's try. If someone wanna raise the hand and no questions. Okay. Okay, so you probably know that this evening, it's the evening of the Memorial Day in Israel. And tomorrow evening and on Wednesday mainly, it's going to be Yom Ha'atzmaut. So I'd like to invite Judy Menikoff, our chair of the Board of Trustees, for a short greeting. Judy, just please unmute yourself.
Okay.
Thank you.
For those of you who know me, I usually try to start with something to quote, and my habits have not changed. So because we're going to be celebrating Israel's Independence Day, I went back to look for something from that day, and I found the Israel's Declaration of Independence. So I'm obviously not going to read the entire thing, but just a second. Okay. The land of Israel was the birthplace of the Jewish people. Here, their spiritual, religious, and national identity was formed. Here they achieved independence and created a culture of national and universal significance. Here, we hereby proclaim the establishment of the Jewish state in Palestine to be called Israel. We offer peace and unity to all the neighboring states and their peoples, and invite them to cooperate with the independent Jewish nation for the common good of all. That was 72 years ago. And I did a little research, and in the 72 years young, Israel is 72 years young, and just to make that point, according to the latest statistics, there are 9.2 million people in Israel today, and almost 1 million of them are children 4 years old and younger, which I believe tells us that our job is not going to be done for many, many, many generations. This is a very young country, and we have an obligation to participate in it. I happen to have experienced Israel's Independence Day a number of years ago with Linda Kirschbaum. It was one of the most moving experiences of my life, and I would encourage everyone who has an opportunity to come to Israel at that time to do so. There is nothing like it. And I don't know what Independence Days are like in other countries other than the United States, but Independence Day and Memorial Day in Israel was unlike anything I had ever experienced, and it stays with me. It's a national holiday, but it's celebrated locally, and it's celebrated in the family. And most families have barbecues and picnics, and they sing and they dance. And I was reading some of the suggestions for how to celebrate this year with COVID-19. And they suggested having a debate whether your hummus was better than someone else's hummus, all sorts of things. But the thing that struck me the most was that they suggested that you have some fun. For example, why not squirt someone in your family with shaving cream? And I thought, well, the last time I squirted any of my family with anything, it was when I threw whipped cream at my son for giving me some lip about something I made for dinner. And so I don't think the shaving cream was going to go in my family, but if you guys want to try it, okay. There isn't a whole lot that we can say except that we can all celebrate by going to YouTube. You can go back to 1948 and listen to Ben Gurion. You can go to a number of other websites and celebrate globally with other people from around the world. And in case you're wondering why Avital would ask me and a non-Israeli to bring greetings on Israel's Independence Day, I found another thing I'd like to read to you. This is from Michael Oren, who served as the American ambassador to Israel from 2009 to 2013. That day, Ben Gurion sat in his living room and watched the outside street where the Jewish people were dancing. They were dancing because they were able to realize what was one of the most remarkable and inspiring achievements in human history. A people who had been exiled from its homeland for 2,000 years before, but which had refused to relinquish its identity, was returning home as sovereign citizens to their own independent state. And I would wish you all to celebrate, that we can all celebrate together and turn on YouTube at the same time. Thank you. Oh.
Thank you, Judy. And just, we are about to conclude, so I'd like to invite Connie and Dan if you want to just conclude it. And Connie, we cannot hear you.
I don't see Connie, so I'll wrap up on his behalf, Avital. Thank you firstly to our 4 students. You're really, really inspiring. You know, thank you so much for sharing your stories with them. That's really the lifeblood of what this organization is about. Our students, whether they're 13 or 85 years old, and hearing how you're coping in this situation is really a lesson for all of us. And we just wish you, all of your families and your fellow students, all the luck for the future and everything that you deserve. And thank you everyone for joining us on this call. We really appreciate your support on it. I can see that Connie is back, so I'm just going to hand over to Connie to have the last words and say goodbye. And you need to unmute yourself, Connie.
Am I unmuted now?
You are.
Okay, just a brief observation. Number one, the staying power. I looked at the number of participants. We had a high of 98, and at this moment we have about 92. It dawns upon me that the group that we have on this call, on this Zoom, are dedicated to the same things that all of us feel we should be dedicated to. Seeing the students, of course, is an incredible inspiration. You had also pointed out, I believe, that out of a terribly difficult situation, we've learned a lot, as they have. Reflect for a moment that each of them suggested that this time spent at home alone gave them time not only to be more together as a family, but permitted something that we would all take for granted, I think, prior to this wonderful electronic age, a time for introspection. That has great value. So that I think that while we're being tested at this time, we're also being rewarded by finding a mechanism by which we can profit from a difficult situation. Obviously, World Order has contributed to their education, but just as importantly, the society has contributed to their ability to think inward and to become more of a family. Finally, you heard from a couple how important the network that we have as an organization spanning 5 continents, 39 different cities and institutions. We can be very proud of what we do. Stay strong, stay healthy, and hopefully we'll meet again soon. Thank you so much for attending.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Folks,
Say